When a company goes through the consulting review process, when they're looking at their different options, and there are many options when it comes to consulting business, what are the key questions to ask? What does a company need to know or understand in terms of how a consultant operates, their track record, the kind of companies they've worked with in the past? I'm trying to get a sense of the due diligence that a company needs to go through to make the right marketing consulting hire.
I think you should never really hire a consultant unless you have familiarized yourself with their thinking. And what I always say is if someone comes to me and they're looking for, they're looking to hire me and they've never read an email or a blog post of mine, I write daily emails and all kinds of things. I'll basically say, hey, why don't you just read my content for a bit, learn what's going on and really kind of get a sense for how I think. And if you want to pay for my thinking applied to your situation, ultimately that's what it's there for. So when picking a consultant, I mean, referrals can have a big impact. I just recently was referred to a client. There's a lot of trust that gets transferred because the person referring me knows that I'm competent. And actually, the last two clients I got were referrals, so that's a good sign. But if you don't have that, the first thing you should look at is the content. Does it resonate? Do you like their way of thinking? Do you like the way that they're marketing themselves? Because that's going to be a potential reflection on how they're going to market you. And then in terms of asking questions, you just want to know, hey, what are you going to do? What's your process? What's your thinking? They should be willing to share a little bit of their strategic thinking about your situation and help you paint a potential picture of what it'll be like to work together. And then, so you can ask them any questions like, have you worked with companies like mine before? What kind of results have you gotten? They may have a case study, but at the end of the day, it should be really obvious that they're able to provide value, that they can do so in the sales conversation, regardless of the questions you ask. The consultant should be asking you most of the questions and providing you what you need to succeed, and then painting the picture of what a successful engagement will look like. But ultimately, in terms of what you ask a consultant, it's, what can I expect over the next 6 or 12 months, and see if you like it.
Let's flip the coin in terms of the questions that a consultant should ask a potential client because it is a two-way street. You're forming a partnership. It's not like hiring an employee where they're just going to do what you tell them to do. What should the consultant be asking a company? What should they be telling them in terms of how they want to work and their processes and the steps that a consultant wants to take or needs to take so they can be successful with clients?
I mean, like anything else, the consultant's job is to get really clear on what the goal is of the client. What does success look like? I use the analogy of Hawaii, for example, and I say, well, where are you trying to go? And okay, we're trying to go to Hawaii. Okay, well, that tells us a lot. So, when do you hope to get there? Well, I hope to get there by tomorrow and I want to take a train. Well, that's just not going to happen. So, first, by identifying the goals and the timelines and what does a home run look like and what's realistic, then you can start to work backwards from that and say, is this goal reasonable? And ultimately, can I help you achieve that objective? The consultant should also be checking in, and this goes both ways with how they feel during the initial sales conversation. If one person feels overly intimidated or doesn't quite feel comfortable with the kind of working conversation, that may be a sign that your working engagement won't be great long term. Other things that a consultant might ask are, have you worked with a consultant before? Because unlike working with employees, unlike working with freelancers or even agencies, a consultant is basically selling you access to their thinking and maybe a few other benefits like training resources and content and structure and other things. That's ultimately what you're paying someone for.
Because when I look at the client that I just parted ways with,
Mm-hmm.
I'm kicking myself, or maybe it's not kicking myself, but I am disappointed that I didn't ask them all these type of questions. For example, have you worked with a consultant before? That would have given me a lot of insight into how much I needed to educate the client as far as how I work and how the consultants work and what actually consultants do. The second one would have been, what does success look like? And be fundamentally clear on what do they want to happen over the next 3, 6, 9 months. And the final one, and this is one I think every consultant needs to ask, is what are your priorities? What do you want
Mm-hmm.
me to do right now versus in a month or 2 months from now versus 6 months now? Because when a company hires a marketing consultant or a consultant, any kind of consultant for that matter, there's a gap that they're trying to fill or a pain that they're trying to resolve. And while you're trying to build a long term plan and build a solid foundation, there's low hanging fruit that needs to be picked, which gives the client confidence and validates the buying decision. So I think these are all things that, in hindsight, I'm going to ask blatantly, not just sort
Yeah.
of subtly, but it's going to come out and say, you have to answer these questions. And unless I get the right answers, then we're not going to be successful working together.
You have to basically try to unsell them into working with you as well. So why even work with me? Why not do this yourself? Why not just try this with the freelancer? Why not just hire an agency to do everything for you? And I think you have to really uncover why they're coming to you. And there needs to be a good reason about why you versus anyone else, and why you as a consultant versus anyone else. And then how do you envision success looking in terms of our relationship? What do you imagine I'm going to do? And what do you think you need to do in order to meet these objectives? So those kinds of questions can really help in pushing back and saying like, what's the real business case here to work together? What's the value of achieving the goal in working together? You want to grow by 10%, or you want to bring structure to your marketing program. What is the business value of doing that? What's the risk of not doing that? And I think that's where a consultant really has to uncover what is the true business case of working together. And that only comes by pushing back and kind of playing devil's advocate about whether they should even work with you in the first place.